So, you find yourself on the UnrealEntGaming channel. How fortunate for you. I, Lord Frieza, will spare your life as long as you subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, don't forget to become a member of UnrealEntGaming's Patreon for tons of exclusive content to early access media and much more. Do it now, or else.
So with Dragon Ball Daima Episode 2 having to previously introduce our newly miniature-sized characters alongside with that of a new demon character by the name of Glorio, it is now finally time for our heroes, the Supreme Kai and Goku, having to take Glorio's lead and having to now finally enter into the demon realm. As I want to go on ahead now and welcome you all to my Dragon Ball Daima Anime Episode number 3 review, and I gotta say that right off the gate from the beginning, this episode was a much needed improvement by comparison to that of Episode 1 and Episode 2, and it was only from the very beginning where, interestingly enough, we had a conversation involving Goku having to ask more about Goma, and only for us to get further confirmation by Glorio that if Goku and company were able to in fact actually defeat Majin Buu, then King Goma shouldn't really be that difficult for them to handle. And being the fact that all of this takes place objectively before the events of Beerus and Dragon Ball Super, then from the very beginning it was basically confirmed that Goma was weaker than that of Majin Buu, and if you want to assume that he's weaker than Kid Buu, Super Buu, Fat Buu, etc., then our heroes really shouldn't have any sort of issues in having to deal with Goma and company down the road if they inevitably end up coming face to face against them. And so what was interesting about the opening acts of this episode before they ended up getting to this giant talking fish that led them into the demon realm, which I went as far as to take issue with, at least with one particular thing that happened, but as soon as our heroes were traversing throughout space until having to come across the giant fish that was named Warp-sama, what I think was interesting and yet very reflective to the late great Toriyama's sense of humor was simply to see how Goku had kept calling this giant thing a goldfish, but when referring to this thing as Sama, which is basically some form of a deity-esque kind of like entity, the golden rule that the Supreme Kai kept telling Goku was that he needs to keep his mouth shut, otherwise Warp-sama is not really going to allow them in and into the demon realm, which the giant fish nearly went as far as to almost do after seeing Goku's ears, because it only appeared as though the only other way to enter into and go through Warp-sama and into the demon realm itself was to not only go as far as to reveal your identity, or at least have that of pointy ears, which the Supreme Kai gave to Goku momentarily just so they can go in. It was only briefly after Warp-sama had spoken to Glorio as our heroes went inside was where I went as far as to take issue with Goku having these pointy ears, because it does suggest that you need to have pointy ears to go in, but you don't really need to have pointy ears throughout the duration of your stay within the demon realm, because as soon as they ended up going inside of Warp-sama, Goku's ears ended up going back to normal, and you have to ask the case in point by reflecting onto this by saying, okay, well, was this something that was needed to be included within this episode if it was momentary, instead of giving him pointy ears throughout the entirety of this series? Because it is only presumed that if you have pointy ears, can you only reside within this realm, and so I found that to be weird for him only to have pointy ears for the moment being only after they went inside of Warp-sama, but then the moment they actually ended up going inside, his ears reverted back to normal. So to me that was really dumb, but it was only upon having to go inside of Warp-sama where we then found out that the demon realm is actually divided into 3 separate realms / 3 different worlds, where the first hatch among the 3 can only be entered by palace members of the first demon world, with all 3 of them having to choose to go into the 3rd hatch first before anything else, as even Shin went as far as to question Glorio's actions by doing this, which even Shin himself had told Glorio, okay, well, that might be the fastest route for us to go through, but shouldn't we at least go through the 2nd, with Glorio basically having to further confirm that no, he only has clearance to go through the 3rd and not through any of the others. So as soon as they were all finally able to enter into the 3rd hatch of the demon realm was when Glorio said that only selective members can enter into hatch number 2, which Glorio also does in fact actually confirm that he does work for hatch number 1 directly under Goma, but what's even more interesting and dare I say very beautiful to see, which I really do hope that we end up seeing for Moro and for Dragon Ball Super whenever the anime comes back, is the way the visuals looked, because even after seeing a giant rock-like statue of the former Demon King Deborah shown in front of Goku for the first time, even the stupid statue looks really good. So everything visually, from the sound design to the overall animation and the colors, it was all very reflective of what I believe a lot of us want to see within the Moro arc, within the Granolah story, whenever that ends up getting animated like 50 years from now, like, you know what I mean? So I don't think if you go ahead and ask any Dragon Ball fan, are they going to complain about the visuals or the sound design, but the narrative is just a bit trashy here and there. But needless to say, I think they make it up in a way where you can almost kind of look at this as being something completely different than what we're normally used to, because the moment Goku ended up actually leaving Glorio's ship and getting a whiff of how this world smelled like, it actually basically kind of smelled like crap to him, because, well, I mean, Goku nearly went as far as to throw up after exiting the ship. He noticed that, of course, the weight and the air and the atmosphere around him felt different. So, of course, we were expecting, and I was hoping that things were in fact going to be different from the Demon Realm when compared to that of Earth, and it was. So what's the first thing that Goku ends up doing, even as a curious little miniaturized kid, is he ends up exploring the area. But even as dumb as Goku is, he almost ends up falling into a dark abyss below after trying to mimic some little mouse-like cat creature, whatever the hell that was, which had only prompted for the native demons around the area to spot Goku. And the moment they ended up spotting him, they immediately ended up trying to bow and arrow Goku to death, which at this point you have to kind of understand, okay, well, of all the characters that you want to try and go after, do you really want to try and use bows and arrows against someone like Goku of all people, you know? But that didn't really matter, because at the end of the day, as soon as Goku ended up noticing them and quickly sidestepping and dodging all of the arrows that were making its way towards him, Glorio, surprisingly enough, ends up stepping in by bypassing and having to sidestep a bunch of spears being thrown his way as well, which inevitably had led him to use his pistol in taking out the natives that were around the area. So one and done, quick little fight. It wasn't anything too mind-blowing or amazing to see, but what I will say is that the fluidity and the animation behind the attacks were really solid. So if they could end up keeping that up, even from Glorio using his dumb pistol to get rid of them, that was all very well shot and very well done. So good on the Dragon Ball Daima team by allowing for everything to feel smooth and feel very consistent, which inevitably had then led us to a different area where Shin and Goku and Glorio had to walk inside of. And again, what this reminded me personally of was having to go back and watch some of the old Star Wars films, because this entire episode from start to finish kind of reminded me of that, because we see them enter and having to touch down on a nearby town, or at least what could be presumed to be that of a town. So we knew that the late great Toriyama was a huge fan of Star Wars, and so all of this in a nutshell reminded me of the Qui-Gon Jinn, Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of adventures, where they're walking through like these shanty towns, talking to some of like the natives around the area, some of them having to, you know, make great conversation, some of them having to be complete idiots, you know? So it was cool to see how there was one moment where Glorio was in fact talking to an individual behind like a gate, as this individual went as far as to remind me of so many of the a-hole characters in Star Wars that you see speak down to our heroes by having to overcharge them and overprice them, you know? But as soon as Glorio went as far as to flash his gun to him, which again was interesting because it's almost like a Jedi flashing their lightsaber to the individual that was pretty much being an a-hole to Glorio ended up giving him what he wanted, which was 2 keys. And so you can almost kind of see of how this was reflective to like Star Wars in a way, which I think was brilliantly done, because you normally don't kind of see these things in Dragon Ball anymore outside of maybe OG Dragon Ball, but that's about it to a degree. To which another good example of having to see all of them walk into a bar and they were eating with Goku again not having pointy ears, just like how it is in Star Wars. As soon as one of these giant green demon-like creatures alongside a wolf having to then be shown approaching Goku, was when they inevitably ended up asking Goku like, hey, you don't really have pointy ears, what the heck are you doing here? Basically calling him an outsider, but not knowing that this little kid right here is easily one of the top strongest warriors in the entire multiverse, even at that time. But instead what we ended up seeing was Glorio pop off first, which I think was good because you want to establish Glorio at least for the fans to go as far as to get behind and care about. So while Goku was eating this really really just weird meat on the table, Glorio just ended up completely fodderizing 2 other fodder characters until Goku stepped in, and then Goku was the one that was shown basically having to body some of the locals around the area as well. So once again, the fluidity, seeing Goku still have this piece of meat or a burger, whatever the hell it was in his mouth, he was being typical Goku by having to leap around, using his size to his advantage, smacking all of these individuals around the area down onto the ground. Some of the more bigger demons thought that they had something going by thinking that they could slam this kid, only for Goku to be shown dropping elbows, so that was really cool to see, which they even tried to cut Goku down in half by using a giant axe as well. And with Goku being as shocked as he was, with him being a stupid miniaturized version of himself, he even went as far as to ask, well, is that really even allowed? Meaning, was it allowed for him to use the axe to try to chop him in half? Which only amped Goku up even more, because as soon as Goku realized, like, okay, these guys mean business type of deal, that was when Goku was shown having to get right into business by having to jump into the action on more of a serious level, of course by still stuffing his face by eating the burger that he was just eating on top of the fact, which I think was a really cool thing to see. Again, it wasn't something that we haven't seen be done before, but by the end of it, as soon as they ended up leaving this place, Goku essentially had knocked everybody within this bar out cold, on top of also stuffing his face with all of the food that he was eating in this place. So it was only towards the very end, as we got to see them sleep and we got to see everyone kind of get a night's rest until early on in the morning, was when the same individuals that basically went as far as to pick a fight with our heroes have stolen Glorio's ship. So that was where the episode ends up coming to a close before having to go into next week's episode, which will be that of episode 4. But even then, by the very end, I want to go on ahead and get your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below about how you guys felt about Dragon Ball Daima episode 3, because not for nothing, I think out of the 3 episodes so far, this was the better episode of Dragon Ball Daima, only because of its exploration. We finally got to see some action involving Goku, involving Glorio, involving other characters from the Demon Realm, and it was like I said earlier, this entire episode felt like a Star Wars episode in a way. They were out exploring different places, encountering different bandits and different enemies and stuff like that. So for what it was worth, it remained consistent. It wasn't as boring or as slow paced as maybe episode 1 and episode 2 were. The utilization of Goku's skills finally came into play by comparison to that of what we saw during episode 2, where he wasn't really fully in tune with his body, he couldn't really fly or do anything of the sort, he was having trouble utilizing his martial arts skills. So I'm really glad that they went as far as to keep Goku consistent in this episode by comparison to that of episode 2. But by the end, I want to go on ahead and get your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. Again, thank you all so much for watching, everybody, and thank you all so much for your time. To which, once again, if you also just so happen to be new to the channel and of course love Dragon Ball and anime, then I do encourage for you all to head on down below and smash that subscribe button, on top of making sure to give this video a big fat thumbs up by smashing that like button down below. Tune back in for more, and with all that being said, I want to thank you all so much for your time, and I'll be seeing each and every single one of you down in the comment section below and in the next video. Take it easy, everybody, and have a great day. Peace.
Hello! Did you know that you can stay up to date with the latest Dragon Ball content by simply subscribing to UnrealEntGaming? Also, don't forget to follow on these social media platforms, you sexy son of a bitch. Roshi. Silent Cell. Me and the fans are having a moment. That's right. I know what you want. Extra long, thick Dragon Ball content. Quality reviews with flawless editing. Yeah, you'd like that, wouldn't you? You dirty bitch. Roshi, the fuck? God damn it, I need them to subscribe, Cell. And we're demonetized. Yeah, screw it. Let's cut to the video.